Good evening. Great games at your table. I'm Jonathan Albin, and this is Nikos RPG. Tonight on Game Master's Guide, we're going to be continuing our series about the Nikos RPG mechanism and the Nikos RPG game, which is now available in pre-release form. And I'll tell you a little bit about the particular volume we're looking at, and then I'll provide you with information on how you can get your hands on it. And just don't forget to press all the buttons down below so that we'll let the algorithm know that you're part of this audience. And let's get started, shall we?
Absorbing damage is the name of the game. From the claws of monsters or the heat from a ball of flame, or strength in numbers is a roll of the dice.
Pardon me. Well, in deference to the way many people have learned to play role-play games in the past, we're going to be starting dealing with Dark Shards. The Dark Shards volume is the high fantasy setting, and the Nikos RPG mechanism collectively is a low threshold for learning to get into the concepts of role-playing. Now, in the master book, we talked about the various parts and parcels of RPG, that the game entails. And in this case, we're going to be looking at the particular rules of dealing with high fantasy, that is, the powers of magic, mystery, the concept and period, of course, generally for fantasy settings, is a medieval setting. So many of the portions that we'll be talking about will also include mechanics for resolving in that kind of a framework as well. But we're going to go through the book in terms of what it will be reaching and how it will be doing so, and what in particular makes the Nikos mechanism specifically different from all the other systems that you've played in before, and arguably I'll be presenting them in the case of them being actually better for your game. So the secret to roleplay games and in Nikos RPG in particular is in the brews. Now, this acronym brews stands for the different factions of building your persona to get your character ready to play. Now, these are also in a mnemonic form, so brews as an acronym stands for base, race, estates, ways, and stuff. And the concept here is that in order to have a quick understanding of how to play the game, if you understand that each of these letters represents a faction of what it takes to put a character together, you can race through them relatively quickly. And in all candor, you can be moving from a complete novice who's never sat down before to actually making character decisions within 5 to 7 minutes. It's really a kind of a wonder to behold. But this concept of the base, race, estates, ways, and states is actually started and promoted in the master book, so this is sort of a refresher. And while it does add additional ambiance because it's set and focused on the setting of the high fantasy realm, which is the fictional past, the mechanism nonetheless is the same regardless of which mechanism you run the games through in the future. So Dark Shards is only the first of the many. Now, the mechanics of roleplay games can be absolutely burdensome and a problem to deal with, or they can be as easy as can be. And in the case of the Nikos mechanism, there are fundamentally 4 ways to engage, and once you understand that those are the only 4, it makes it pretty easy to determine which one should be used at any given time. These include checks, challenges, conflicts, and contests. And to go over them simply, we talked about them a little bit yesterday when we talked about the master book, because that's where it's also initially set up. But the idea of a check is being a roll of dice comparing your success or failure rate based on what your base values are, and this is determined by which skill you're using and which attribute your skill is associated with. When I say attribute, I mean your base, but the idea is that it's just a quick die roll, success, failure, and there are also the concepts of the graduated values of your successes, which we mentioned yesterday. The idea that you can have a partial success or a wild success across the spectrum gives a real understanding of how well you did on that particular dice roll. So those checks are just made against the dice roll threshold, and you're done. In the case of challenges are the same, but you utilize the core value, suggesting that the action is being made under some form of stress or duress that makes it more difficult. And again, it also still has a partial and a wild success threshold, so it's arguably a larger portion of the potential pie than the straight die roll would be under a check, but the challenges are nonetheless just simply a comparison on that threshold. The next form of engagement are the contests, and a contest is when two players are competing in the same skill, and they simply are determining which one of them did better. And using the threshold mechanism, it's a lot easier to differentiate where you are in that threshold compared to your opponent. And so you roll your dice, compare against your skill, determine your level of success, and compare with your opponent. And if you have succeeded at a greater level than they have, then you have, quote, won the competition. Simple, fast, easy. We get able to get through with conflict information much more quickly. In the case of a conflict die roll, then it's a situation where the player is rolling against their particular skill and the opponent is rolling against an opposing skill. For example, if you are rolling your ability to hide as compared to the opponent's ability to seek, you can do a simple one die roll check and determine which participant has the upper hand just on that simple die roll. And so with those being your primary forms of conflict and engagement, it makes it really fast to just move through scenes. And by doing so, then you can actually add things like different stages to the scene. And by doing so, you give a richness and a depth that you can't get to in traditional role-play games. Now, this does suggest and verify that the skills are the key to the game. Every functional opportunity within a role-play game mechanism can itself be defined as a skill. Now, to a greater or lesser extent, that may be true, but there are times when you really do have to depend on a particular skills value. And the values, because they're skills-based, can be trained and advanced and improved session after session, which means that the players feel the advancement on an on-the-go and continuous basis, so there's no longer a dissatisfaction about waiting for when you get to improve or advance your character, unlike the days when you had to worry about waiting to level up your engagement. This way you're just able to just keep rolling skill by skill within the game. And we covered this somewhat in the Master Book episode yesterday, but this is also true in the Dark Shards. Therefore, magic, all of the varieties and forms of magic are themselves skills that can be advanced, improved, and increased over time. And that really provides a more living, more enduring play experience, because you see your improvement episode after episode continuing to advance. Now, when we talk about magics, there are 1,000 different things we might talk about, and the element of difference between them really is a matter of nuance, and Dark Shards does this perfectly because each of the different styles of magic has a different threshold by which it is compared and also a different cost involved. So therefore, a person who is playing a classic learn by memory, rote memorization, learn the formulas and the rituals, then that's one type of magic, whereas there might be another individual who is more impulsive, more will in the word, more quick action, act and then verify. And by having the variety of styles of magic defined by different thresholds, it allows for the players to actually feel those differences, character by character, persona by persona. And thereby you're able to create a lasting world review that the players can depend on, because the mechanisms that they utilize would be the same regardless of who it is, utilizing the same rules of magic that they are, and therefore the experience of learning how another magic works becomes important to the story, and it adds a richness and depth that isn't found in a flat Dungeons and Dragons or other basic RPG. And what really this comes down to is that the players are able to therefore personalize their advancement. Instead of waiting for the game master to grant permission for a character to level up or to be bound to particular advancements that are only represented by the feats and skills, this opportunity lets your players actually choose and guide their own direction forward in the story, and thereby become part of the decision-making process and make the scenes make sense to them as well by choosing which skills that they advance and support and promote week over week. That means they get to build what they want to build without any external ramifications or limitations binding them to that course. And what this leads to, therefore, is that the magic makes sense. As the players learn how the various magic styles work, they can choose to advance, whether they are advancing an individual magical skill or whether they want to advance the more general use of magic. They can actually choose, are they a generalist or a specialist? Are they working with a particular outcome in mind and therefore growing towards that, or are they just simply wanting to see what more is possible beyond what they've already done? And it's really up to the players to discern the course of the very magics that you are defining within the game, therefore making the entire game more personalized to the players you have in it. An element of Dark Shards that perhaps is most often overlooked is for the storyteller or game master to be able to see, in particular, their monster creations in the light of something that they can create. There's a series of volumes of books that players will use to depend on to tell them what the creatures are, how powerful they are, and what their effects may be. And in the case of Dark Shards, the players can actually determine exactly how many special skills or special marks a certain being can have, and how hardy and resilient that creature is, and how much of a threat he can be to the players. And by being able to do it on the fly, fast, such as my Monsters in a Minute series, you're able to provide the players in your game with a unique experience that ties directly to what you as a storyteller are attempting to present, whether it be dominant and terrifying monsters that are very destructive, or whether they are comical, silly, and seemingly diversion-based encounters. The idea of the monsters and the creatures that you create become more alive because you have more time, because the rules didn't bind you to have to cross-check rules and lore and all that. You can actually devise and create them on the fly, right along as you go. All in all, the Nikos RPG mechanism is meant to make your games better, faster, and easier to play, and to allow your players to be able to personalize and customize their experience within your framework so that they get what they're looking for out of the game. As I often say, we're trying to make your sessions make sense, and utilizing the Nikos mechanism certainly provides the ability to do so. Now, I'll put in the link down below the capacity for you to get a hold of the property right now. And before then, if you want to actually participate, you can download from nikosrpg.com our Play Now fast play system and be able to be up and running within 5 or 10 minutes at your end, not only with the idea of creating the characters and playing through the mechanisms of the game, but also to even utilize the downloadable community information sheet and actually write your first adventure in about the same amount of span of time that it would take for a player to build out their persona for their very first character. And so I encourage you to do so. If you have any questions, make sure you leave a comment down below. Let us know what's going on. If you have any other questions, of course, you can reach out to me either through this or through our Discord channel, which is also linked below. For more information about what's going on in our world, check out nikosrpg.com and also our Patreon account at patreon.com/Nikos. I want to thank you for being here. Realize we're here Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. and 11 p.m. And we'll see you in the next time. And don't forget, go play.